Welcome to Real Judaism with Rabbi Ari Klapper. Unfiltered wisdom for Jewish life.
Okay, we are back here on Daf Kuf Pei. Hey, we finished the parak already, Limud Torah, and we're going to be talking about this long footnote that he has over here, talking about chochmah. Just to get everybody caught up, what exactly he's going to be talking about over here. In the beginning of Oiz Gimel, Pinkus brings a piece from the Shar cheshbon hanefesh of the Chovos HaLevavos. Chovos HaLevavos is famous for Shar Bitochon, right? The gates of trust. But there are actually 10 gates, and one of them is called Shar cheshbon hanefesh, the gate of introspection. So here he brought, we mentioned it, I believe, last week, that any chochmah that a person has actually is coming straight from Hashem. Certainly the Torah, and that's why he went on. The Torah is way beyond any other chochmah. But any chochmah that a person has, really is not within his capabilities to have it. This is what the Chovos HaLevavos says. So here, I believe he quotes this. The reason why we're mentioning it is because it brings out this same idea, Shabbos, that when it comes to our Torah, we really don't have anything of our own. The Torah is the words of Hashem. It's not ours. But we have our chelik in Torah in how much we're connected to Hashem. And that was really the point. The more you're connected to Hashem, it means the less of me there is. The less of me there is, the more you can actually see Hashem. That's the idea. And he brings that out from the Torah. But he's saying it's also true with regard to chochmah as well. So that's where we're going to be discussing here today. Hatek Chovos HaLevavos Shar cheshbon hanefesh. It says the Pinkus, I'm going to now quote what the Chovos HaLevavos says in cheshbon hanefesh, Shar cheshbon hanefesh, about this point. HaCheshbon ha'echad ve'esrim. The 21st cheshbon. You have to imagine how many cheshbonos, how much introspection a person needs, right? So he's very organized. When you read the Sefer Chovos HaLevavos, he's very, very organized. Even a lot of times he gives you a list in the beginning of the chapter of everything I'm going to be discussing in this chapter, right? You lead through many of the different sharim. He'll give you just list after list. And so, like I said, it's very organized. Chovos HaLevavos was a Rishon. He lived many hundreds of years ago. Kafi Perush v'signon Sefer Lev Tov, and this is according to the translation of the Sefer Lev Tov. Just a little bit of historical knowledge about the Sefer Chovos HaLevavos. The Sefer Chovos HaLevavos is it's not known, but it was actually written in Arabic, meaning because it was written for the people, and the people spoke. That's what the language that they spoke, and historically it's been that way. That when Jews are in Golus, they don't speak Lashon HaKodesh. Maybe they'll daven from Lashon HaKodesh. Maybe they'll read from the Torah in Lashon HaKodesh. But as we know in America, Americans speak English. They don't speak Lashon HaKodesh, right? Maybe some people understand, but that's not their native language, which is why we have all of these translations in English, right? That's where all these the publishers have their market to make all these svarim in English, because that's what the people read. That's what they know. But it's been that way for time immemorial. The Rambam wrote his Perush Mishnayos in Arabic, which is why to have an accurate read of it, to what Rambam is saying, to make diukim in it, is actually quite difficult, because it has to be translated from Arabic first into Lashon HaKodesh, and then you're trying to make a diuk based on a translation. So it's actually much harder. And there actually is a new Arabic translation to Hebrew recently, in the last, 5-10 years, a new one that came out. The famous one before that was a Kapach edition, and before that there were other translations. But it was much harder to make diukim, because how do you know that you translated perfectly correctly? The Chovos HaLevavos originally was written in Arabic. However, it was already translated into Hebrew, into Lashon HaKodesh, by a Rishon already. Meaning already back hundreds of years ago, it was already translated into Hebrew by a man named Rabbi Yehuda ibn Tibbon, I believe. But that Hebrew which is the one that we have, is a little bit harder to read. Therefore, recently, I'm not exactly sure how long ago it was, whether it was 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever it was a new modernized translation, which more or less is universally held of. And even Rapinkus, when he's quoting now, he's quoting from the Lev Tov. The Lev Tov is this translation that many, many people have, which is a either more free-flowing type of translation to the Chovos HaLevavos, easier to read. Anyway, so that's what he's going with. The Sefer Lev Tov's translation of the Chovos HaLevavos. Cheshbon hanefesh al ha'odam la'asos la'atzmo la'ezed dargo hu yochol la'agia ba'avodas Hashem. A person has to do a cheshbon hanefesh, has to do introspection about himself, saying to himself, where can I reach? Where can I reach when it comes to avodas Hashem? V'yargil et atzmo tchila la'avodas Hashem shehi b'yecholto. And a person has to accustom himself in the very beginning for a proper avodas Hashem, which he can reach. V'yasoik bo b'hasmoda, as long as he works hard, as long as he really pushes himself, and then he can reach that. V'yarutz v'yizarez l'asoisa ad shehi ta'aseh lo l'iragel, until he gets to a point where he's actually used to it. Where he's actually used to it. It means basically a lot of times a person has dreams. I can never reach that. It's too high. I'm never going to be able to do it. Push. Get yourself to do it. But it's too hard. Maybe I'll be able to do it one time. Maybe one time. Right? I know somebody who was inspired by one of the drushes. Actually, one of the drushes here when Rabbi Bitterman came a bunch of months ago in the summer. And he decided, you know what, there was a story that Rabbi Bitterman told about a place, I think it was in Vienna or somewhere in Europe, that everybody in there lived to like 100 years old. Everybody, right? And they wanted to know why. Like, why is everybody zoiche to live such long lives over here? Like extremely long lives. And it turns out that every single person that davened in that shul, where they were like, people were living like crazy long lives, every single one was makbid to get to davening Shacharis early. Every single one. Yeah? There was one guy who like Nebuch died in his 80s or something like that. And it turned out that guy wasn't makbid. Some story like that. Rabbi Bitterman told this story when he was here in the summer. So I know one person who was like, wow, that's a really amazing thing. But like, it's too difficult to do that. That's very, very hard. How am I going to get to Shacharis early? What am I going to do? But he decided that Rabbi Bitterman also spoke about taking on Kabbalahs. You have to take on Kabbalahs. I think that's where the Orach Chaim shir started from that in the shul. And so this person decided, no, he's going to take on to be Shacharis 5 minutes early. And then after he took that on bli neder, after he took that, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Maybe I should have taken it on for a day, for a week. Why did I say something like that? Why did I just take it on completely like that? Why did I do that? Oh, a day I could do it. One day I could do it. A week I could do it. But like just unending? Okay, it's too late already, Is it bli neder? But Sof Sipur, more or less, since then, he's come either early or on time for almost every single tefillah. For almost every single tefillah. Yeah, you fall, you had a bad night the night before, but almost every single one. 5 minutes he hasn't made too often, but early or on time every single time. Because when you take on something and you're going to push yourself, go the whole way, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. So that's what, keep doing it and you'll just get used to it. My grandfather, I don't know if you remember, Evan, my grandfather, it's like a joke by us. But this is a great Maila. If he wasn't 15 minutes early for Shacharis, it was late. And he was very upset when people would walk in late to the minyan. Very upset. You expect us to wait for you? You come in late, you expect us to wait for you? We're not waiting for you. 15 minutes early to Shacharis. That's how it was. Every single day. Yeah? He ran at 8 o'clock a minyan in the Young Israel. Like, the Maisa, when you take it on, that's what you do. But it's hard. In the beginning, it's certainly hard. So what do? You have to get used to it. You get used to it more and more. You get into it. It becomes much easier to do. V'achar kach yishtadel alot ledargos nosafot b'avodas Hashem. Then you realize you actually start hitting other places, very higher madrigas than you could have imagined, and maybe you can even take a step up from that. Here, I'm in the 246, something like that line of the footnote. Shein lamala miyacholto, even things that you never dreamed that you would be able to do. Vishtokech belibo lahagia alein. You wouldn't believe it. So Kate suddenly hasig oisem v'yivakesh. You have no idea how could I possibly have gotten to this. Me'akil bichinos belibo mitzvuno shazarlo. It's only Hashem helped me. You know, you think about it for a second. If somebody told me when I was a teenager, one day you're going to be giving a shir in Shabbos Malkasa, I'm going to be like, what's Shabbos Malkasa? What's a shir? Like what? Who would believe that somebody could do something like me? No way. I still remember when I was in the airport on the way to Shalavim, Shana Aleph. My parents said something about flipping out or whatever, and I said to them, I still remember, I said to them, what, me wear a black hat? You think so? Please, come on. Right? We don't, but if a person tries and you try, you see, you'll hit places you'll never believe that you could. As long as you set your heart to it, to reach levels that you think they're bigger than me, they're higher than me. Right? I don't even know what that is. I certainly can't do it. Because when you keep trying, you keep working, Hashem will answer your plea. Hashem will open up your mind. You'll be able to do it. And he'll strengthen your mind as a darga, and then you'll start growing. You'll start hitting places you never realized you could hit. Even mitzvahs way beyond anything that you thought you could do. There's a great story about this. I won't spend too much time on it. There was already a lot of stories in this, and I do want to finish this entire thing before the end of this year. But there's an amazing story about the Stei Chemed. The Stei Chemed, he's known from his svarim. The Stei Chemed. Stei Chemed is more or less like an encyclopedia of Torah. Right? They have Encyclopedia Talmudit. Before that, they had the Stei Chemed. The Stei Chemed is just like Kol Torah Kula, in like alphabetized. Everything. There's a story about the Stei Chemed, without going into all the details, but the Stei Chemed did an act of Mesiras Nefesh that was beyond normal. It was in a koilel, and in the koilel, there was somebody who didn't like the koilel in that town, and they wanted to really, and specifically, I think they didn't like him too much. He was just an avrich. He was an avrich in a koilel. He wasn't, he was diligent. He worked very hard. He was mamish a big masmid, but like, he wasn't the top of the koilel. He wasn't the best guy in the koilel, right? But he was a big masmid, and he used to stay late. He used to stay longer than the hours. So this guy who didn't like the koilel wanted to embarrass the koilel and embarrass him. So he paid the Arab cleaning woman to publicly accuse him, the Stei Chemed, of doing something inappropriate. And, this guy paid her tons of money to do that, and she did, because why not, right? Tons of money. And it was such an embarrassment that even afterwards, nobody, in the streets, they were talking about him and this and that. But the Rosh Kollel was like all lies, and he was trying to defend him, but he was so broken from this whole ma'isa that he just had to leave. And he left. He left the city. He couldn't stay there anymore. He was so embarrassed by this whole thing. And a number of months later, he's sitting in some base measure somewhere else, and this Arab woman comes in, and she says, "Listen, I have a deal for you. See, this guy, he gave me all this money to make up this whole story about you. Obviously, everybody knows that it's fake, but like, the money ran out. And I got fired from the job also. They fired me, and I don't have any money now. I'll tell you what, if you convince the Rosh Kollel to give me my job back, I will publicly go out and tell everybody the truth. What happened, that this guy paid me, and the whole thing was a lie, and he paid me to do it, and this whole thing, and I'll publicize the whole thing, that the whole thing was, you were framed and everything, if you help me get my job back. So he thought to himself that, I have a chance to clear my name, I have this and that. But then he said to himself, you know what? Chillul Hashem, this whole thing was such a terrible Chillul Hashem. If we come and we bring the whole thing back up, what's going to be? It can be another Chillul Hashem, a whole nother Chillul Hashem. So he said to her, I'm not interested, but I'll help you get your job back anyway. I'll try to talk to the Rosh Kodesh to get your job back anyway, but please do not say another word. Don't say this to anybody. Just leave the whole thing. Just leave it. And he said, I think he actually writes a story in the very beginning of the Sefer. He says about himself, he says when he did that, he felt his mind open. And all of a sudden, he was able to understand everything. Things that he couldn't understand before. He was able to understand everything. And he got such amazing skills, kishronis. That's how he became the Seichemet. A gift, min hashamayim, for his Mesiras Nefesh. Amazing thing. So that's what we have to do. We have to work hard. And a lot of times, that means Mesiras Nefesh, maybe not like this story, but that's how a person will reach Madregas. Hashem will give him. Attain dugma, says the Chovos HaLevavos. I'm going to give you an example. From a person who learns a trade, or he learns a certain chochmah, a certain type of wisdom. A person learns a trade. He only starts off, you learn carpentry. You're learning, make little things here. You know a little bit, so you do a little bit. I really have more skills than this, but I have to start somewhere, right? Like Rabbi Akiva learning Aleph Beis. Obviously, Rabbi Akiva had bigger kishonas than just learning Aleph Beis, but you got to start somewhere. But now I understand things better. Who shoyket and he's working hard. Amalachto haboire noisin bo das lahavin es yisoidas malacha. Hashem now blesses him that you actually understand it more yisodi, more fundamentally you understand it better. You can bring out chidushim, right? Who are the biggest mumchim when it comes, let's say, to medicine and things, people like that? They learned the topic so well that they actually understand how things work. When you understand the building blocks of how things work, you actually can come up with new methods of how to cure things. I understand. It's not just I'm following directions and I know how to do all the directions 100%. Give me 1,000 directions, I'll remember all 1,000 directions. I'll know exactly what to do, but you don't really understand the topic. If you really understood the topic, you would actually be able to come up with your own thing, right? This actually comes out in learning as well. I found that some of full shurim come from a simple question that a Talmud asks. How do you explain this Rashi? What does Rashi mean? And when you're working with a Talmud who doesn't understand a simple Rashi, quote unquote, so you have to break it down to the tiniest pieces to explain each word. But when you do that, you actually really understand what Rashi's saying. And when you start to really understand what Rashi's saying, all of a sudden, that actually doesn't make sense. What do you mean? Why would Rashi say something like that? Why? When you read it really fast, yeah, okay, you don't think about it too much. But when you have to get down to the most fundamental, smallest little bits, and you start thinking about it, wait a second, Rashi's saying a lot more than I thought he was. And that whole shurim come out of that because you're breaking it down to the finest pieces. Somebody who has a mumfius like that can come out with chidushim. Nobody ever taught him that. Nobody never learned that anywhere. Where did he get it from? All that cumulative knowledge, Hashem gives him a little bit more. Hashem gives him this more and more and more until he can actually bring out things that nobody ever taught him. Adam haloi made chochmah. The same thing if you learn wisdom. The mashal, as chochmas handasa. Let's say somebody's learning engineering. When you're starting off, you can't really get into the foundations, the fundamentals, the deep understanding behind physics. Rather, you learn, okay, this is how you build. You put this beam here, the beam has to be exactly at a 45-degree angle. Why? I don't know exactly why, but that's what you have to do. Those are the rules. You got to follow the rules. Okay, so you can follow the rules, and I can actually start doing things with the rules. I've got pictures. I got to follow the rules. Kemoshe Sidur Otam, Aklidas, Besifro, Shechiber, Al Chochmah, and that's somebody named Aklidas. I guess it was maybe a Greek, some kind engineer who wrote in his work on engineering, on physics. Now you know how to actually do it. Now you actually want to take it to the next level. You want to see what you can take that and expand on it. As a boire noisen bodas, Hashem actually gives the person more understanding. You can understand why it works like that. Why, if I put this beam at this angle, does it have the ability to hold things up better? Right? This is one of these things. You go to the science museum and they explain to you how a pulley system works, that even though if you would just try to move it on your own, you wouldn't be able to do it, but somehow in the pulley system it works. How did that happen? It's the same weight. It's the same thing, but somehow I can put a little bit of effort now and I can move it, and before even a lot of effort wouldn't work. Why? Why is that? And they explain it to you, right? The reason is because, but those ideas came out because people were given extra kishonos, extra skills by Hashem. Now he understands it better. He strengthens it. Until you can come up with, wow, we can build a stadium. We thought you needed beams and, every 50 feet you needed a beam, and there was no such thing as a big open space that was covered. It was impossible to build like a stadium, something that has no beams at all in the middle, and yet it's still covered with the roof. It could be from end to end. It could be hundreds of meters. How is it possible? When you understand the chochmah behind it, you can build things that are tremendous. And how? Well, now all of that is already written, but maybe there are going to be new things that they're going to discover. He's being medama this to nevuah. It's obviously not real nevuah, but the point of that is like nevuah is that it's a gift from Hashem. A person really wouldn't be able to come to this understanding without Hashem giving it to him. And comes any chochmah, any type of wisdom. Any type of wisdom. When a person works on that wisdom, Hashem will send him down a koyach ruchni, a spiritual power to understand the chochmah. Right? Hashem is the one who put all these chochmah, especially we're talking about hard sciences, right? Talking about sciences, chochmahs in the world. Chochmahs in the world, Hashem built it into the bria. It's not only about, let's say, physics or chemistry, which are actually built into the fabric of existence, but even more, let's say, I don't know if you would call it liberal arts, but things like psychology and other forms of, psychological therapies, that they're chochmas. Those are chochmas. Where do they come from? They're built into the bria. HaKadosh Baruch Hu built them into the bria. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu built them into the bria, how does the way the brain processes memories and trauma and right? How does all that work to the point where, we actually, the person who was in deep trauma and it is affecting their whole life, it can understanding of that chochmah can cure a person. No other person can give him that. But Chacham adif inavi. Gemara Baba Basra, Chochmah is greater than a navi. Ve'alihu amar achein ruachi be'enosh v'nishmas shakai tvinam. It's the soul of Hashem that gives a person, it's the ruchnius that Hashem rains down on us that gives a person the ability, bina, to understand. B'dugma, v'doime l'dugma zu. Another example to this. Alecha achi lahavin, my brother, you need to understand. Ki hamatar ikarit v'mitzvahs hamutalas al ibarim hi lo rer et ha'odem l'kayim mitzvahs hamutalas al mitzvun. Now he's changing gears over here, but he's using the same topic, same ideas, but we're changing gears over here. He's coming to explain to us Chovos HaLevavos. It's called Chovos HaLevavos, right? Chovos HaLevavos. on your heart. It's on your heart. What does that mean, Chovos HaLevavos? You know what? I think already we're past the time. So I guess we'll have to finish this next week. Goch.
Thank you for joining Real Judaism, where we explore Torah's wisdom for real life. Created by J Foundations and produced by Eli Podcast Productions. Find more episodes at realjudaism.org and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.